Hi, my name is Hailey Stevens.
And I'm Adam Levine.
Adam Levine is my godfather, and we've decided to try and put a little podcast together for life during COVID. For many millions of people right now, life is especially challenging in unprecedented ways on levels most of us have not ever experienced before. And we'd like to try and make it a little bit brighter. Not drastically, but in ways that we are capable of doing so.
That's right. People are sick, frightened, depressed, unemployed, or worse. Unfortunately, we can't fix that, but we want to put something out there to counter it.
That's why Adam asked me to do a podcast with him. It is our hope that this small gesture will make some of you smile or laugh. The show is called Life is Hard, but it is a very simple concept. Each week, myself or him will do a show and tell of one thing that makes us happy or glad.
Then the other one asks a few questions about it to try and understand it more fully and try and experience the same uplifting thoughts. We are not sure where the podcast will go or whether it will be any good, but we are going to try it and see what happens. Now, without further ado, we bring you
Life is hard.
But
So Adam, what makes you happy today?
well, Hailey, it's funny that you should ask that. I actually was thinking about this little figurine that I have,
Okay.
which I think I've told you about in the past.
Yeah, briefly.
I was very excited about it when I got it. So it's King Tut, but his full name was Tutankhamun, and
Mhm.
this is like a little kind of wood, maybe with some sort of like painted steel or bronze that I just got off of Etsy.com for $20.
Yep.
Um,
Little promo there.
yeah, yeah. So you can. I think that there are some probably still available on Etsy.com. I actually had to look all over the internet for it. I knew it existed because
Really?
it's not as in demand, but it was a very specific like figurine that I wanted because when I
Right.
basically I found out about it when I went to see the King Tut show. His tombs treasures toured around the world for the 100th anniversary.
Yeah.
And I don't know, did it come to Australia?
I don't know about Australia, but I think I might have seen it maybe in like England or somewhere. I
England, yeah.
can't
I
remember.
think it came, yeah. Well, they always go
But
to England.
yeah,
So,
it was really impressive.
oh, so you went?
I think I remember going.
Oh,
I
that's amazing.
don't remember where, but at some point. So
Well,
how
I
come you
think
decided to get the statue?
well, so basically, I decided, Hailey, because when I went to the show, I went last year, I think. We went through the gift shop at the end, and I saw there was like all this kitschy sort of like touristy stuff, including that statue. And I liked the statue, but I sort of thought to myself, that's a waste of money and
Yeah.
dumb. And I got the book instead of like I got the catalog because I was like, oh, that's much
Yeah.
better. It's a good investment. I can always have the information. But the statue never left my mind, and I kept thinking about it. And because actually in the exhibition they have this, but this is a miniaturized figure of the actual
Nice
statue,
effective.
it's larger than life. So basically, like the ancient Egyptians believed that after you die, you just begin a new life, the afterlife. You don't actually die, but you have to make the voyage to get there. And the body takes the soul to the afterlife, but for the trip, it needs a lot of things. And that's what was like basically the impetus for making these elaborate tombs full of treasures and jewelry, and because they
Right,
provided them
yeah.
with what they thought was going to be what they needed to transport them to
Of
the
course, yeah.
afterlife. So, but because back in Egypt, it was always a problem to have tomb robbers, just like we have criminals today that
Yeah.
go in and loot the tomb.
Yeah.
They thought that they should just place security guards outside the tomb, which
Yeah.
makes perfect sense, but they also just thought that they didn't need real people, that they could just use these statues that would have like powers and
Yeah.
protect the dead from being looted. And obviously one of the amazing things that stands out about Tut's tomb in comparison with all the others, probably the main amazing thing is that it was never
It wasn't.
significantly plundered. Like they found some traces of a couple break-ins, but nobody ever got to the treasure. And
Wow.
so that's probably because of this guy. But actually, there were two of them, and they were.
Is it one on each side?
Yeah, so they were like, so basically, this is the door, because like inside the tomb, it was they constructed it very cleverly to try and trick people so that they wouldn't find the coffin. And outside of the burial chamber, they had a door, and then they had these guys standing facing each other, two of them on either side of the door, and they were like literally guarding Tut. You know what? The figures are so powerful to look at in real life because they're made out of wood with like pieces of gold foil. But then what really stands out, if you look at it closely, is that like the eyes, not ones, but the eyes from the actual figure were done with, I think it was obsidian. It was some sort of black,
some like gem or
stone.
something.
Yeah. And so they look like eyes, like they look like, because they reflect back at you, and they're black. So it's. I mean, basically. I
just saw like a flash behind you.
He needs to be a part of it. He's actually all over right now. So basically, you can kind of feel the power when you look into the eyes of the actual. None of this. This is kind of dinky, but I just like it because. Well, I like it basically because in life, like you have two things. You have either things that are cool or things that are pretty. And what I love so much about this is that it's both. It's really pretty, but it's really cool.
Yeah. So how come this statue of course it's amazing to look at, but how come it brings you such happy feelings? Is it the memory of like going to museum or
you asked like literally the perfect question. I think
thank you.
That was okay. Well, basically I'm so glad you asked that, Hailey, because basically so we've been over the statue, and like you can tell by looking at it, I would say objectively it's pretty beautiful. I think that kind of transcends cultures and civilizations. I think it's really that beauty's universal. I know a lot of people don't think that, but I do, and I think
it is.
Possesses it. Well, I'm glad that you agree. But what makes me so happy about it is because I don't know if you read when you were in the I'm sorry, I can't.
Museum.
J.V.C keeps distracting me. He keeps doing this stuff.
He clearly has something to say about it.
So funny. So when you were at the exhibit, and did you read anything about like the story about how it happened?
Well, I don't actually remember the museum that much, but I mean this is a separate story. But my dad and I were lucky enough to go to Egypt and actually like visit some of the tombs.
I forgot that he took you there.
So I think we went to King Tut. Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, this is this is my story.
You?
Huh?
Can I interview you?
No.
Well, did you go
no. Tell me why. Tell me why it brings you happiness, and then I'll give you a brief overview of the trip.
I'm only going to tell you if you then promise to tell me everything about King Tut.
Okay. Well, I don't know a lot about the details. I mean, obviously, it's all the stuff you learn in primary school about Egypt. But I mean, no, it was only a couple years ago. But it was just more like the environment and like actually seeing it yourself. That was amazing. But yeah, I'll tell you that later. Anyway.
Okay,
So
I'm so eager to know. So I'll tell you why it makes me happy. Because the story of how it was found is sort of extraordinary. Basically, there was this young archaeologist that people didn't really take seriously. He didn't have a lot of archaeology experience. He was kind of like delicately built for a field that was very rough, especially if you're doing it in the Far East back 100 years ago when there weren't creature comforts like we have, like air conditioning, you know. Really simple things that made it habitable for us. And he wasn't really taken seriously as an archaeologist. He had a background in art and drafting, and he was accompanying, he was sort of an apprentice to some established archaeologist in Egypt, and he was on a dig and he saw some sort of a artifact that he couldn't recognize. And he read the hieroglyphics, and it was the name of a pharaoh that they had never heard of before. So basically, he became obsessed with this one artifact. And he decided that because there was this name, that there were still more tombs to be uncovered in the Valley of the Kings, which was a very popular place for the pharaohs to have been buried. But by then, 1920, they had thought that most of the tombs were completely discovered. And most people thought that the name was just a reference to a king that never really existed, that was packed into the other tomb of one of the dig that he was on originally. Anyway, he had a patron, because that's the way that you had to do it back then, and I'm sure to a degree today. It's like a sponsor, you know. He had a patron in the UK who he went to, and he told him that he thought that this was a hint that there was something more out there, and the patron believed in him and said, all right, well, you can start to dig, I'll finance your dig for a certain amount of time. So what they did was that they divided what he thought was like the likely area of the tomb that was left in the Valley of the Kings into 4 quadrants. And they did the first quadrant, nothing. They did the second
everywhere.
nothing. Third quadrant, nothing. Then the patron says, look, the archaeologist name who discovers the tomb is Howard Carter. And the patron says, you know, look, Howard, like, this is a waste, like, I'm losing money. This is a waste of time. It's risky. The Egyptian government wasn't that friendly. And Carter believed so fervently that there was something there that he basically sweet-talked his patron into financing him to just dig the final quadrant. And so he agreed reluctantly. And one day they were digging, they didn't find anything. But on the dig for all these guys, there were like Egyptian, basically, servants that were exploited for their labor. And there were young kids that would bring water to the archaeologists because it was so hot. And a water boy who was 7 years old just put some water down to rest it in the sand while he did something else, and the cup fell through the sand. And
that's crazy.
So of course, that then was the steps down to the entryway, and it was perfectly preserved. There was evidence that it had been found by a couple of grave robbers, but they didn't take anything of substance. And it is basically the most completely preserved tomb of all of the ancient Egyptian pharaohs. And then that led to basically the greatest discovery in all of archaeology. I mean, with maybe the exception of like the Acropolis, ever. And this guy who no one was ever taken seriously suddenly is now
found the most amazing thing.
And he's probably the only archaeologist who anyone even knows his name. I mean, today, you know, so it's just, that story makes me feel so happy, because it's the story of, it's a very simple lesson, but in life, and I think probably, again, like, not to be patronizing, but like, you'll experience this more as you like get out of school and become a grown-up. A lot of life is having to stick to your guns and follow your dreams, even when there's all these reasons and all these factors that are telling you that it's wrong. And that the greatest discoveries and successes and triumphs come from basically doing what Howard Carter did, which is hanging on against all odds and just taking the risk and being determined and persevering. And so that's what I think of when I see this statue, because this statue brings back to me, it brings back the memory of how they did it, how they were able to uncover it, which for me is actually equally as exciting as what they found. I love to look at the picture, but I just love, more than anything, I love the story.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. Like, especially now, just looking at the statue on a daily basis and thinking, you know what, just keep working through it, like through the tough times right now, and
You're right.
we'll be
No,
back to
you're right.
normal soon enough, you know?
And I wonder if it's unconscious that because I ordered it right after lockdown began, I had been planning on ordering
Right.
it, but I just hadn't had time to sit down and look for it on the internet. I knew where I was going to
Yeah.
put it. Do you remember when you stayed here that there's like when you walk into the apartment, there's like a little arch niche, like a very small niche.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I put it there so it's the first thing that you see when you walk into the apartment. And he
Right.
said, Tut greets you. But it's a great first thing to see. It makes me very happy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Wow.
first studied Howard Carter when I was 8, and I didn't take in that
Yeah.
story. I took it in last year when the exhibit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think I did as well. I remember our school doing like a fake plane trip. So we all had to sit in rows in like a classroom pretending to fly to Egypt and learn about
Wow.
about King Tut.
Did you have
So
a
that's all I remember though. That's all I remember. Just that fake plane ride, and then none of the information is like still in my head. But it was just I remember loving it, like the topic.
It's
So yeah,
it's so
yeah,
exciting because I think it does go back to like that universal idea of I think there's something about archaeology that's very appealing to every person. I think that's why Indiana Jones was so successful. This is like the
yeah,
idea of uncovering hidden secrets. I mean, if you think about it,
yeah.
or even if you don't think about it, ancient Egypt was around for significantly longer than modern day Egypt has been around. The first
Really? Wow.
Egyptian dynasty was in like 3000 something BC. So they actually have a larger imprint on the country and on the culture than the current Egyptians
Then
do,
it's current. Yeah,
which is just
that's
it just puts things in perspective because we're so
yeah.
small and you know like this period right now like what I keep thinking is like it'll be done in a few months and a few months in the scheme of things is a blink of an eye.
Nothing. I know. I think it's insane how long ago all of that was though. How like, I mean, I found especially visiting the pyramids in Cairo, that was just the most amazing thing because you think
Really.
every single pyramid is hand built and with all of that time and effort and to build these amazing things that have lasted like thousands of years, thousands, like they're still in amazing shape
Amazing.
considering how long ago it was. Yeah. So I
Wow.
guess
I would love to see the
it
pyramid.
puts things in proportion because I think in a couple years time this is going to be hopefully we've moved on from it. Um,
I think so.
but if not, it's only a few years, you know, and in 1,000 years time, hopefully we've recovered from it and like we've looked back on it. It's like a inspirational thing. People persevering throughout it, you know.
Yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say like basically the same idea as you, but I was saying like in my life, whenever there's a particularly hard period, I always fantasize about being like in the future and being able to look back on it and laugh, you know. And I
Yeah.
think that a lot of people will do that for COVID. I don't think that everybody will have the luxury to do that for COVID, but I think
Yeah,
that in
that's
the
true.
long run, most people then will look back on it like sort of the way that other societies in history have looked back on very difficult times in the past um, and they'll be able to it's a relief to be detached because it means that it's past, but for right
Hmm.
now we kind of have to hang in there. And I guess like the Tut thing, I guess what I was trying to say is that it really reminds me that time goes very quickly, even bad times. And so that brings me hope too, you know, because this is less than
Hopefully
a blink
this will
of
go
an eye.
quickly.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, think it will, even if it doesn't feel like it is. It will go quickly in
I
retrospect.
mean, it's been 5 months. It's been 5 months of lockdown pretty much, and where's it all gone? So,
Uh,
yeah.
it's been five
I
months, but
mean,
it feels like in some ways 5 years.
yeah, it's like the longest and shortest time
Longest
because
and shortest time at once. I completely agree with
it's
you.
gone.
Everybody's saying the
Yeah,
same thing.
because it's gone so fast, but then every day feels like the longest day ever, you know? It's like,
Yeah. And because like the
because you can't
time is so
do
empty.
anything.
Yeah, exactly. Um,
Yeah.
so Hailey,
Well,
when
I'm
you
glad that statue brings you joy
oh, thank you, but now you have to
every
tell
day.
this side of the bargain. So when you were in Egypt,
Okay.
Did you get to go in?
Yeah, so what do you want to know? I mean, we did like a bit of a tour down the Nile. I just want to make it very clear, I'm very grateful that we got to do this. Like, it's the most amazing trip ever.
I
So
wanted to do that my whole life. Did you go
if
into?
anyone has the opportunity, do it. It's the best
Were
thing
you
you can do.
able to go into Tuts Tomb?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is what it was actually like thousands of years ago, but you basically walk down this ramp and you've got like this sort of tunnel thing with beautiful drawings and everything all along the walls, and most of them are still intact. So incredible how long it's lasted.
Oh my
And
god.
then you keep walking through. You have like rooms with I'm assuming where his belongings were. They're probably gone now in museums or wherever. But then all of the paintings and stuff on the walls all been preserved. And then you keep walking all the way to the back pretty much, and that's when you have this giant box in the middle of the room,
Right.
which literally just looks like a square of sand. But that's where his
The
actual
burial
tomb
chamber.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, inside his.
Right. I've
There's a
seen photos.
chamber, and then
I've
there's
seen photos of
boxes
it.
inside. Yeah,
It's
it's
amazing.
it's amazing. It's all intact. Like
Do you
everything
know
looks like they dug it
there
up from hundreds of years ago. Like
and it just sat there. Like think about it. Even in 1920, like it literally sat there for 5,000 years.
yeah, it's insane.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And like this guy just stood for 5,000 years in a room that nobody knew
Yeah.
about with his friend. I don't know. That's the kind of stuff that I feel like is like really, really mind-boggling and makes it helps. It's kind of like what we were saying last week about walking. It just helps us to get out of our own head
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah. I think I know. I found the biggest thing, even like we got to see all these things or whatever, but I thought the most impressionable thing was the fact that you see it all in a museum, which is amazing, but then it doesn't feel the same as when you're walking through a tomb or like
For sure.
you're looking or you're on a camel ride around the pyramids. You know, it's not the same. Like, wow, this is actually real. This is you don't appreciate how long ago it all was, because when you're walking through a tomb, like with all these paintings still intact on the wall, you're like, hang on, what? This was, how can people be painting this 5, 10,000 years ago, whatever it was? And it's a lot easier to imagine people doing it, which just makes it insane, you know?
It's
So
insane. And you know what else is like, this is like a whole other tangent. But first I want to reply to that. I want to say that you're really lucky that you got to see the actual tomb, because I don't know if you've heard, but I read, when I was at the exhibit last year, they are building an entire museum to house the tomb. They're going to move the tomb contents out of the actual Valley of the Kings.
wow.
They're going to move it to Cairo. There's a
Yeah.
gorgeous building that they're building, but no one's going to have you had a once in a lifetime opportunity. Maybe they'll still keep the tomb open for passers
Yeah.
through, but the actual objects are going to be housed in a museum now in Cairo.
I mean, most of it all was in a museum already, but there were still things that were in there. So
I think you're right.
yeah, but I know they probably moved out like the actual burial chamber or something like that, like the
Well, no, do you know what? Maybe it was
I don't know.
already moved out then.
Yeah, I mean,
just hope
we
that
did go to a museum briefly, and it was similar. You know, it had all of his real life
The Egypt Museum.
monuments. Yeah, the one in Cairo. So
One in Cairo, yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of that was from his tomb, but
I think it was.
I don't know. Maybe they've already moved out already. I'm not sure.
No, I think
Maybe they did
that's
before.
why they built it, because there was too much from his tomb to house in the Cairo Museum, in the Egypt Museum in Cairo, and it deserved.
Yeah.
It. Yeah, but that's amazing. I mean, the other thing I was just going to add is that one thing that really boggled me, or kind of like struck me, when I went and I read about the artifacts, is that all this stuff was made basically by peasants and merchants for free. And they did it because they thought that they were going to be helping the king to get to the afterlife with the assistance of the gods. And they thought there was nothing more noble, that they could use their gifts and their talents towards pursuing. And I mean, this guy is, as you know, doesn't even scratch the surface of how beautiful and intricate those jewels and drawings and sculptures were. I mean, some of them are just mind-blowing, and there's like chests with like inlay of precious metals and stones. All of that was done because the people thought that it was the right thing for them to be doing in order to gain with the gods in the afterlife. Just another different way.
That amount of like passion and belief in their like afterlife is just crazy. I mean, I know I've heard that I'm not sure this is true, so don't hold it to me, but I think some peasants and like servants kind of sacrifice their lives as well to be buried with the king. Is that right?
Well, yeah. I don't know how many would have willingly, but I think I have heard that, but I know for sure also that a lot of them were forced. And I also know that a lot of slaves were killed and buried inside the pyramids in Giza as just part of, you know, that's the way things used to be. Great Wall of China, all these things couldn't have been without tons of slave labor. And if they died, they just threw them in. Yeah, so that's a little thing. Thanks for asking me these questions.
It's amazing, the story behind it. Yeah. I think we could talk about that for hours, obviously.
That's why it's happy.
Thousands of years of information about it.
Yeah. Well, like for fun, every once in a while, I'll just go surf the web and reread it, or like
why not?
Photos, you know?
Okay, well, thank you for sharing.
Cool. Well, thanks for listening. And I guess we'll see you next week, and you'll be on the stand.
Yeah, I have to find something interesting to talk about.
All right. Well, yeah, we'll either see you next week or this week, but it depends on your classes.
Of course, yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
All right. Okay, well, until next time.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye.